May 29th? Son of a bitch. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Cruel and Unusual Storytime. I am your host, Simon Dexter. Hi. My advice to you all is, avoid getting a job in retail if you can, 'cause it will destroy everything you love. But anyway, I'm back. At least finally have a day I can record shit. So today I'm doing something a bit different. It's not quite a creepypasta, but it's not quite a fan fiction either. So I didn't really know what date to post it on. I just know I wanted to do something a little bit small to get back into the swing of things yet again. So my friend Eric sent me this. I read a page of it, and I decided it was gold, and I needed to share it with you guys before I got back into Patrick's diabetes and whatnot. So I figured, why not? So, sit back, relax, and let's enjoy the history of the world. Alright. So we got kind of a little header before we get into the actual story, so let me read that first. Anguished English. Richard Lederer, I'm going to assume that's how that was pronounced, the following excerpt from Lederer's book is his compilation of a history of the world from genuine student bloopers collected by teachers throughout the U.S. from 8th grade through college level. You know it's going to be good just from that alone. Okay, let's start this. I need to actually be able to scroll before I can do this. Oh, can I just do that? Okay, splendid. All right. Ancient Egypt was inhabited by mummies, and they all wrote in hydraulics. They lived in the Sahara Desert. Actually, that's the Sahara Desert, and traveled by Camelot. The climate of the Sahara is such that the inhabitants have to live elsewhere. So certain areas of the desert are cultivated by irrigation. Their pyramids are a range of mountains between France and Spain. The Egyptians built the pyramids in the shape of a huge triangular cube. The Bible is full of interesting caricatures. In the first book of the Bible, Genesis. Yes. Adam and Eve are created from an apple tree. I always get speedsters down that road. I'll never understand why. One of their children, Cain, asked, "Am I my brother's son?" You were close that time, friend. God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac on Mount Montezuma. Jacob, son of Isaac, stole his brother's birthmark. Jacob was a patriarch who brought up his 12 sons to be patriarchs, but they did not take to it. One of Jacob's sons, Joseph, gave refuse to the Israelites. Pharaoh forced the Hebrew slaves to make bread without straw. You shouldn't make bread with straw, just so you know. Straw, I don't believe, is edible. Moses led them to the Red Sea, where they made unleavened bread, which is bread made without any ingredients at all. Afterwards, Moses went up to Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments. He died before he ever reached Canada. It's a shame, really. David was a Hebrew king skilled at playing the lyre. He fought with the Finkelsteins, a race of people who lived in biblical times. Oh boy. Solomon, one of David's sons, had 300 wives and 700 porcupines. Some of these kids, I think, were just trolling, because that makes no sense. Later came Job, who had one trouble after another. I don't think Job is spelled that way. Is his name Job or is it Jove? I've never really caught. Eventually he lost all cattle and all his children. Oh, damn it. Go back up. And he had to go live alone with his wife in the desert. The Greeks were a highly sculptured people, and without them we wouldn't have history. The Greeks invented 3 kinds of column: Corinthian, Ironic, and Doric, spelled with a C, so I don't. And built the apocalypse. They also had myths. A myth is a female moth. Hope you're all feeling better about anything you may have miswrote lately. One myth says the mother of Achilles dipped him in the river Styx until he became intolerable. Achilles appears in the Iliad by Homer. Homer also wrote the Odyssey. Wow. In which Penelope was the last hardship that Ulysses endured on his journey. Actually, Homer was not written by Homer, but by another man of that name. Homer was not written by Homer. I want that on a shirt. Socrates was a famous Greek teacher who went around giving people advice. They killed him. Socrates died from an overdose of wedlock. After his death, his career suffered a dramatic decline. Who saw that one coming? In the Olympic Games, Greeks ran races, jumped, hurled the biscuits, and threw the java. I'm assuming they meant the javelin. But what do I know? The reward to the victor was a coral reef. The government of Athens was democratic because people took the law into their own hands. Thank you for understanding democracy. There were no wars in Greece. Tell that to the Spartans. I believe they were Greek, if I recall. Or at least they existed at the same time the Athenians did. I might be getting my history mixed up. It's been a few years. As the mountains were so high that they couldn't climb over to see what their neighbors were doing. No. When they fought with the Persians, the Greeks were outnumbered because the Persians had more men. See? Either that or they're just copying the movie 300, and it confused me too. I don't know. Eventually, the Romans conquered the Greeks. History calls people Romans because they never stayed in one place for very long. Is that true? I haven't been in a history class in a few years. Julius Caesar extinguished himself on the battlefields of Gaul. The Ides of March murdered him because they thought he was going to be made king. Well, go figure. Dying, he gasped out the words, "T. Brutus." T. Brutus. Shakespeare himself could not have written that better. Nero was a cruel tyranny who would torture his poor subjects by playing the fiddle to them. Okay. Rome came to have too many luxuries and baths, because you only need one, folks, only one bath. At Roman banquets, the guests wore garlics in their hair. They took 2 baths in 2 days, which is probably how you should do it, and that's the cause of the fall of Rome. Today, Rome is full of fallen arches. Then came the Middle Ages, when everyone was middle-aged. King Alfred conquered the dames. King Arthur lived in the age of chivalry. With brave knights on prancing horses, and beautiful women King Harold mustarded. Commas. King Harold mustarded his troops before the Battle of Hastings. Joan of Arc was canonized by Bernard Shaw, and victims of the blue bonnet plague grew boobs on their necks. Finally, Magna Carta provided that no free man should be hanged twice for the same offense, which I believe is 100% fair, pro Magna Carta. In medieval times, because you missed quite a few letters there, friend, most people were illiterate. The greatest writer of the futile ages was Chaucer, who wrote many poems and verses and also wrote literature, as writers are wont to do. During this time, people put on morality plays about ghosts, goblins, virgins, and other mythical creatures. That is 100% true. Another story was about William Tell, who shot an arrow through an apple while standing on his son's head. No, don't do that. The Renaissance was an age in which more individuals felt their value of their human being. Martin Luther was nailed to the church door at Wittenberg for selling papal indulgences. Nailed to the Church of Wittenberg. I like that twist. What Martin Luther did. The government of England... I'm not done. He died a horrible death, being excommunicated by a bull. It was the painter Donatello's interest in the female nude that made him the father of the Renaissance. Frankly, Donatello is the artist I heard of the least in the Renaissance. I just know he exists because of the Ninja Turtles. Sorry to my artist friends. The government of England was a limited mockery. From the womb of Henry VIII, Protestantism was born. He found walking difficult because he had an abbess on his knee. I'm not even sure what that's supposed to be, but whatever. Queen Elizabeth was the Virgin Queen. As a queen, she was a success. When Elizabeth exposed herself before her troops, they all shouted, "Hurrah!" Then her navy went out and defeated the Spanish armadillo. Because damn that Spanish armadillo. It was an age of great inventions and discoveries. Gutenberg invented the Bible. I think you're a bit late there, Gutenberg. Another important invention was the circulation of blood. Sir Walter Raleigh is a historical figure because he invented cigarettes and started smoking. That's what cigarettes are for, so I don't doubt it. And Sir Francis Drake circumcised the world with a 100-foot clipper. Ow. The greatest writer of the Renaissance was William Shakespeare. Shakespeare was born in the year 1564, supposedly on his birthday. Supposedly on his birthday. Yeah, well, I would hope so. If it wasn't, I'm very confused. He never made much money, and is famous only because of plays. He's also famous for his sonnets, you uncultured clod. He lived at Windsor with his merry wives, writing tragedies, comedies, and errors. It's a comedy of errors, but whatever. Also, I think he only had one wife, and I also think he was in the closet the entire time. In one of Shakespeare's famous plays, Hamlet rations out his situation by relieving himself in a long soliloquy. His mind is filled with the filth of incestuous sheets, when she pours over every time he sees his mother. In another play, Lady Macbeth... I shouldn't be saying Macbeth, that's bad luck. I better not say Macbeth anymore, Macbeth. Lady Macbeth tries to convince Macbeth to kill the king by attacking his manhood, which is a good way to kill the king. Not a very fair or nice way, but it works. Yep, son of a bitch. Get back up there. The proof that the witches in Macbeth were supernatural is that no one could eat what they cooked. And that saying Macbeth too many times in a theater will get everyone to lynch you. The clown in As You Like It is named Touchdown, and Romeo and Juliet are an example of a heroic couplet. No. Writing at the same time as Shakespeare was Miguel Cervantes. That's the best name ever. He wrote Don Quixote. He wrote Don Quixote. I'm assuming he meant Don Quixote, which is why I said that first. But whatever. The next great author was John Milton. Milton wrote Paradise Lost. Then his wife died, and he wrote Paradise Regained. Okay, I think that was a kid just having fun, because that's kind of funny. During the Renaissance, America began. Did not begin in the Renaissance. Christopher Columbus was a great navigator who discovered America. No, he wasn't. Go read the Oatmeal. He will tell you the truth of Christopher Columbus. Plus, the Vikings were here first. While cursing about the Atlantic, ships were called the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Fe. Okay, anyone who's been in elementary school here knows that's not right. Later, the Pilgrims crossed the ocean, and this was called Pilgrim's Progress. Not sure about that, but what do I know? The winter of 1620 was a hard one for the settlers. Many people died, and many babies were born. Circle of life. Good thing. Captain John Smith was responsible for all of this. Captain John Smith was responsible for all of this. For all the deaths and all the babies. It was all John Smith. That's fantastic. One of the causes of the Revolutionary War was the English put tax in their tea. And not taxes, T-A-C-K-S. They put tax, little metal tax, in their tea. Fucking splendid. Also, I'm assuming you're missing an L, because it looked like colonist to me, would send their parcels through the post without stamps, because fuck the stamps. Mailing tax. During the war, the redcoats Must you honk during my recording? The redcoats in Paul Revere was throwing balls over stone walls. The dogs were barking and peacocks crowing. Peacocks? Why peacocks? Finally, the colonists won the war and no longer had to pay for taxes with an I. Which it isn't true, because I still pay taxes every year. Delegates from the original 13 states formed the Contented Congress. I'm assuming they meant Continental, because I think that's what it is, the Continental Congress. I don't remember. Thomas Jefferson, a virgin, not very nice, and Benjamin Franklin were two singers of the Declaration of Independence. Franklin had gone to Boston carrying all his clothes in his pocket. If all of his clothes were in his pocket, how was he holding the pocket up? And a loaf of bread under each arm. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about at this point. He invented electricity by rubbing two cats backwards and declared, "A horse divided against itself cannot stand." Remember, this is a bunch of bloopers stringed into one, so it's may sound trolly, but it's just a bunch of different wrong things stringed together in one paper. This isn't just one actual student's paper. Franklin died in 1790 and is still dead. Thank God. George Washington married Martha Curtis and in due time became the father of our country. I almost did the Napoleon thing, which is the wrong country, and luckily my buttons are too low for that. His farewell address was on Mount Vernon. Not on Mount Vernon, just was Mount Vernon. Soon the Constitution of the United States was adopted to secure domestic hostility. Under the Constitution, the people enjoyed the rights to keep bear arms. Such as mine, bear arms. English is important. Abraham Lincoln became America's greatest president. America's greatest precedent. Oh, great. Lincoln's mother died in infancy, and he was born in a log cabin, which he built with his own hands. When Lincoln was president, he wore only a tall silk hat. He said, "In onion, there is strength." Truer words have not been spoken. Abraham Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address while traveling from Washington to Gettysburg, obviously, on the back of an envelope. He also freed the slaves. He didn't exactly free all of the slaves. Just a little history lesson for you there. By signing the Emancipation Proclamation. Emancipation Proclamation. Thank you. Emasculation isn't nearly as flattering. On the night of April 14th, 1865, Lincoln went to the theater and got shot in his seat by one of the actors in a moving picture show. Moving picture shows didn't exist during Lincoln's time. The believed assassinator was John Wilkes Booth, a supposedly insane actor. This ruined Booth's career, among many other things. Meanwhile, in Europe, the Enlightenment was a reasonable time. Voltaire invented electricity and also wrote a book called Candy. Gravity was invented by Isaac Walton. I think you missed this guy up with Isaac Newton, who discovered gravity, but otherwise, because no one invented gravity. It is chiefly noticeable in the autumn when the apples are falling off the trees. You did, in fact, mix up Isaac Walton with Isaac Newton somehow. I don't know how. Johann Bach wrote a great many musical compositions and had a large number of children. In between, he practiced on an old spinster, which he kept in his attic. Bach died from 1750 to the present. Fantastic. Bach was the most famous composer in the world, so was Handel. Handel was half German, half Italian, and half English, making him 150% man. Also, 150% very, very white. He was very large. Beethoven wrote music even though he was deaf. He wasn't deaf until the last quarter of his career. He was so deaf he wrote loud music. All orchestral music is kind of loud. He took long walks in the forest even when everyone was calling for him. Beethoven expired in 1827 and later died for this. France was in a serious state. The French Revolution was accomplished before it happened and catapulted into Napoleon. During the Napoleonic Wars, the crowned heads of Europe were trembling in their shoes. Then Spanish guerrillas as in the animal, not guerrillas as in the type of fighter, came down from the hills and nipped at Napoleon's flanks. Napoleon became ill with bladder problems and was very tense and unrestrained. He wanted an heir to inherit his power, but since Josephine was a baroness, she couldn't have any children. She was barren. She was technically his queen, so be nice. The sun never set on the British Empire because the British Empire is in the east and the sun sets in the west. That's so stupid. Queen Victoria was the longest queen. She sat on the throne for 63 years. Elizabeth II is beating her, I believe, at this point. She was a moral woman who practiced virtue her reclining years, and finally, the end of her life, were exemplary of a great personality. Her death was the final event which ended her reign. As is most deaths, frankly. The 19th century was a time of great many thoughts and inventions. People stopped reproducing by hand and started reproducing by machine. I would not advise reproducing by machine. The invention of the steamboat caused a network of rivers to spring up. Cyrus McCormick invented the McCormick Raper. The McCormick Raper. There's something wrong there, but I don't know actually what he created, which did the work of 100 men. Samuel Morse invented a code of telepathy. I wish I knew what to do. Oh my god, how stupid is this in Morse code? Louis Pasteur discovered a cure for rabies. No, Louis Pasteur, sorry, because this is the guy who invented pasteurization, discovered a cure for rabies. Not rabies, rabies. Charles Darwin was a naturalist who wrote The Origin of the Species. Madman Curie discovered radio, and Karl Marx became one of the Marx brothers. In the perfect world we wished. The First World War, caused by the assignation of the Archduke by an anarchist, ushered in a new era in the annals of human history. And that was an excerpt from Richard Lederer's book, Anguished English. Just to prove that even in non-fiction, you can write something cruel and unusual. I don't really have anything else to say about this, because it is what it is, so hope you all enjoyed it. I'm actually going to record another episode right now, so I will see you all on Sunday. You all have a good one.